Most MSP business owners were a tech that decided they wanted to start their own business. Certainly, I fall into that category, right? I think well over 95% of MSPs were started by someone doing technical work who was pretty darn good at the tech side of the world, could talk to humans a little bit better than the average, and they decided they wanted to go do their own thing. And the reality is that transition from being a technician to a business owner is a huge step. It's a thing that many MSPs struggle with. You don't have to look very far from r/MSP to r/small MSP to the members in my peer groups over at PAX 8, especially in that $1 to $1 million flight plan peer group that we built just for this particular conversation, to understand that business transition is a thing that people struggle with the most when it comes to all things MSP startup. My name is Adam Hanneman, and welcome to Ramblings of a Geek. I've been in the MSP space for 25 years or so, and yes, I did start my own MSP way back in the day, way before MSP was even a term. And yeah, the business moderately failed because I was not ready for and did not have the skills to learn how to build and run a business. I was very much in the mold of good technician, not great business person. And those are the things I struggled with. The tech side always came easy for me. The business side did not. And so I've spent the last 10 years or so of my career working to level that stuff up, right? And really to understand how business operates, how business in general operates, and to basically allow the things that I learned the hard way to be able to be taught to people so they didn't have to learn things necessarily that same hard way. So that's what we're getting in today, is that transition between technician to business owner. Those are really important distinctions, and again, an area that's fraught with opportunities to learn new things and to get outside your comfort zone. So let's talk about that for a little bit today. So if I think of the kind of the levels of this small MSP growth, there's really 3 or 4 stages that I think are worth talking about, right? Because you start off in level 1, which is you are the owner, you are doing all of the things. You're doing all things, everything, all of the time, right? You are doing sales and marketing, you are doing technical work, you are doing client reach outs in account management, you're doing your books probably, and you're invoicing, and some of those things are probably falling through the cracks. For me, invoicing was one of my weak points, just because it was like not that interesting for me, right? And you're doing all the things all of the time, and eventually you're like, hey, time out. I got to bring on some more people to help me out with some of these things so I can free up my time for other things. And you bring on a technician, and that first technician that you bring on is an important one. And I actually am a fan of bringing on somebody who isn't super junior, right? I'm not a huge fan of bringing on a tier 1 as my very first technician, because they're going to require their hand to be held quite frequently for quite a long time. The idea here is that I think I might bring in a level 2.5 type of engineer, where I can pretty much say, here's a pile of tickets and a pile of work, go make it happen and help me document as we go, right? That's the kind of type of engineer I want to bring in, at least for one of my first 1 or maybe even 2, because they require less supervision, because you have other things to go do, right? And so your small team is a small team still. You have 1, maybe 2 engineers, and you're still getting involved in lots of different stuff, right? You're still getting involved in lots of technical questions, and this client said this, and that client said that, and this client is pissed off for whatever reason, and you're getting involved in the things. And eventually, you bring on 2 or 3 other engineers, and you've got a team of 4 or 5, maybe you probably have a team lead at this point. And I've talked about that whole section in a video about kind of the owner's path throughout the stages of MSP growth. But in this stage, you're trying to bring on that, you're trying to like offload some of that stuff to a team lead of some sort. And this team lead will take off a lot of that day-to-day stuff on you, but you still are getting involved in lots and lots of things. And eventually what happens is you get to this level where you are just sort of stuck, because things still rely on you too much, right? And the reality is that this happens for a number of reasons, right? The biggest issue here is, I think, is you have a little bit of an identity issue, right? Because you built this MSP based on the idea that you are a really good tech that can talk to people and can understand all the things and can see some of the big picture stuff and deal with the little picture stuff, and you're able to do all these things. But the reality is that when you are involved in all of the things, you become the bottleneck and actually can stunt the growth of your business. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the ways out of that kind of stuck feeling. When you're in this stage or level when everything relies on you, your MSP growth gets capped at somewhere around that million, maybe $1.5 million range, right? There's only so much you can do to break through that plateau completely by yourself. And it's usually revolves around how many hours in the day you're willing to work. And at some point, you need to sleep and you need to eat and maybe have some time with your family and other things, right? So when you're stuck at at this level, you have to do a few things to kind of break free of it. Because if you don't, you create some additional problems for you and your team and your clients, frankly. If you are getting some value out of this video today, please do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button, do all the YouTube things. It does really help me and kind of helps get this channel out in front of other folks as well. One of the best ways out of this stuck situation is to implement some systems and processes that allow things to happen without your direct involvement. This is where you make sure the technical processes are documented. And this isn't necessarily you documenting them all yourself, but it's certainly you're involved in some of those conversations. And the goal here is to make sure that somebody else can run a large portion of what happens on a day-to-day basis without your involvement. So you're documenting the things that you do on a frequent basis. And you're building a culture within the team that you have, as small or as large as it is, that they need to make sure that they're documenting what they're doing and the key processes as well, so that way they aren't creating their own bottlenecks for themselves and for their teams as well as you grow your business. One of the biggest things that you need to do at this stage is to not just jump back in. It is so easy and so tempting to jump back in and like be the savior, because you know what? You started a business because you were pretty good technically and you can see the big picture of things and you can think on your feet. All of those things are skill sets that you've built over the course of your life, almost certainly. And holy cow, is it satisfying to jump in and solve a problem that nobody else could fix. Reality is that keeps you in that stuck phase. It really, really does. And as much as it's painful to watch somebody else struggle a little bit, it's in your best interest to give them some guidance and stay back a little bit and let them take some low risk lumps. You can still be there to help them out, still be there to kind of guide them along, but the minute you just jump back in and just become the answer guy is the minute that you are then the answer guy for forever. I've talked to so many business owners who loved it when the team came to them asking them for help because they would just give them an answer. They just spout out the answer and well, that's great. And they solve a problem or whatever. They solve it for the moment. They didn't teach anybody anything. They just taught them to come to the MSP owner to ask them for every time there's another question. And the MSP owner then just becomes, just embroiled in all of the things that happen across the entire business, whether they should or shouldn't. And I would argue more often than not, they shouldn't, right? So when you run into a situation where your team can learn on their own, step back, let them figure it out a little bit. Let them, again, take some low risk lumps if they have to and give them a little bit of guidance. But no matter what you do, don't just step back in and take it back over. Because as you do this, and as you step further and further away from some of the day-to-day stuff, as weird as that's going to feel to you, this is going to allow you to learn some of the other stuff you haven't had a chance to learn yet. Some of the HR stuff, some of the leadership stuff, some of the financial stuff, the sales and marketing. All of these things are things you need to learn in order to grow your business up and to be good at running a business. Now, I'm going to suggest that you don't need to become an expert in all of those things, right? You don't need to spend the next 20 years of your life becoming an expert in sales and becoming an expert in marketing and becoming an expert in finance and doing all of these things. But you need to be good enough at all of those things to know what good looks like for when somebody is doing it on your behalf, right? I often will say, you don't need to become a CPA, but you do need to be able to read your P&L, and you probably should be able to read your balance sheet and understand the cash flows of your business. Those are things that you should understand at a pretty early stage, but you don't need to be able to file your own business taxes, right? There's no reason for that. You don't need to be the expert in all of those things. And again, it's really hard for us as technical people to acknowledge and let go of being an expert in things because we're pretty good at becoming quick experts on many things. I'm telling you here is that you need to get good enough and know when you can and should hand things off to other people. Not only do I do these videos about once a week, I also release a newsletter about once a month. I'm going to drop the link on the screen and in the description of this video. I would love it if you join my newsletter. One of the ways that you shift the need for you to be involved in all of things is to change what you're focusing on. You are looking at business outcomes. You're looking at business metrics versus tickets and SLAs and those kind of things. You now hopefully have people for that, right? Tech lead, manager, something of that regard to watch those ticket queues and pay attention to those things and elevate things to you only when they must be elevated to you. You don't want to be involved in all of the things all the time because then you get pulled into everything. So you zoom out and you look at overall customer satisfaction. You look at your gross margins, you look at the big ticket metrics. And it's not even a ticket metric, it's really more like hours per endpoint per month. And you're looking at the bigger picture items until you can then hand some of those things off to other people as well, right? And the idea is you want to start zooming further and further out and keep an eye on the different parts of your business, but not be directly involved in all of those things. Because when you're directly involved in all of the things, that's when you burn out. And that's when you frankly irritate your team and maybe get them to like not want to work for you anymore. So think about what that looks like for you and build a plan for how you can step further and further away. Somebody really smart that I like to listen to, his name is Reed. He talks about take a vacation for a week and make sure your team, knows what they need to do. But when you can take a vacation for a week and like nobody dropped any balls, then take a vacation for 2 and then 4 and then step further and further away, not to abdicate doing your job, but to figure out where the bottlenecks exist in your world, where if they rely on you for all these different things, okay, start reducing some of those bottlenecks so that way you can take more time away. And that is actually just a sign of your company maturing overall. And that's how you break through these plateaus, because if everything relies on you as the business owner, your company will only get to be so big, right? Like I said before, that plateau is right around $1 million, maybe $1.5 million if you want to work extra hard or you're a little bit more efficient than everybody else. But if you are going to run all of the things and be involved in every decision and be involved in every one-on-one and every review and every process runs through you in some way, shape, or form, you are going to run into a situation where you just can't possibly grow it any further without something breaking. And it's usually something with you, whether it's your health, physical or mental, something breaks if you try and control all of the things. It's a lot to wear on a person. And so building a really good team to help you grow and take some of those things off your plate is really, really important and vital for the growth of your business. One of the cool things that happens as you work your way through this and you step a little bit further and further away from things is that you will go on vacation or you'll be doing something else and be otherwise engaged in something else happening over in a different part of the business, and something happens. A client goes down, a client is pissed off, or something happens, or a employee leaves or does something stupid. Like something happens that's would typically be a thing that you get brought into, and your team handles it. And they just say, hey, oh, by the way, this thing over here happened. We took care of it. This is what we did. This is what the outcome was. And just wanted to let you know. And let me tell you, when your team can do that for you and you just are sort of the receiver of the ending news, and as long as that response is, and the outcome was good enough, and do not look for perfect, look for good enough, then you can start to breathe a little bit easier. You can feel a little bit better about where the business is and where things are headed, because they didn't involve you in this sticky situation. And did they do it exactly how you would have done it? No, probably not. But did they do it well enough? Yeah, they probably did. And so I want you to think about that when your team comes to you and says, hey, this thing happened, give them a pat on the back. Maybe give them a little bit of guidance, but I wouldn't nitpick at every little thing that they did differently than you, especially if the outcome was just fine. Because when you do all of this and you step further back, it allows you to spend more time on strategy, more time on growing the business and thinking about the bigger picture of things and think about where the business is heading. When you are doing all the things day to day, you are focused on what is right in front of you. Whatever this happens to be, this is what you're focused on. And that, in order to grow your business, doesn't work, right? You need to be able to zoom out and take a look from the top down and see where things are headed, see where you want to take the business, and understand what it's going to take you to get from point A to point B. Now, oftentimes it's hard to figure out how to get from point A to point B. So maybe make those points shorter term, right? Maybe let's just talk about this quarter and next quarter, and then you get good at that, and you say, okay, well, this quarter and the end of the year, and presuming the end of the year isn't next quarter, and then okay, now how about the whole next year, and then how about the year after that, and maybe 3 years and 5 years out, right? I run some exercises in a number of different contexts where we talk about what do you want your business to look like when you exit, and what does that look like, and how many years out is that? Is it 5 years out? Is it 10? Is it 15? Is it like so far in the future you don't even care about it? All of those answers are just fine. But the idea here is you want to think about what that might look like to you as a business owner, and then step your way back a little bit closer into more near-term things. I like to think of a 5-year plan, 5-year destination, a 3-year plan in the kind of the midpoint, and a 1-year plan for how I'm going to get from now to 1 year, from 1 year to 3 years, and 3 years to 5, and 5 is on the way to whatever the exit is. And you can change things up a little bit if you need to, but the idea is that I want you to think about what this looks like and think about what the future looks like for your business. And the reality is it's really hard to do that when you are doing all of the things and you're responsible for every little day-to-day thing. And every time a client calls, you get pulled into a thing because whatever reason that happens. The thing I want you to think about and really be deliberate about is extracting some of that me need to be involved in all the things into letting your team handle some stuff, so that way you can look at the bigger picture in the long run. And it's going to take you some iterations through that. So don't be surprised if like you're not great at it at first. No one's good at that to begin with. It requires a fair amount of diligent, deliberate effort to move those things forward. And this is an opportunity for you to do it, to grow and do some of those things. One thing I want to leave you with is that the cool part about all this is that you don't have to do this alone anymore. Back when I was launching and running and ultimately essentially failing at my MSP way back in the day, is that you are not in this alone. There are peer groups out there, there are courses out there, there are other people you can talk to and learn from, right? Of course, I'm partial to my own peer group program over at PAX 8, especially if you are in that smaller MSP side of the world. I'd love you to check out our flight plan groups that get you from $1 to $1 million in revenue. We deliberately built content and conversation around helping you get there. But you don't have to, you don't have to go with us. There's plenty of other opportunities for you to learn from other people. And there's a whole industry of people who want to help other people. Our entire business model is based on helping other people do stuff. Most MSPs that I've talked to are more than happy to help out other fellow MSPs who are struggling with things. Even if they're in the same market, even if they're sort of competitors, oftentimes they're much more willing to help than you might expect. One thing I would encourage you to do or think about is to leverage the broader community. The MSP community, by and large, is super helpful to each other, whether it's joining a peer group or joining online message boards, whether it's Discord or, I hate to say it, but Reddit. Some of those places can be really beneficial, presuming you can weed out some of the noise. And the reality is that there are plenty of people out here who want to be helpful, right? I think like channels like mine, channels like Harris and Barron from Growth Generators. I think about the Empath team, right? The broader PAX 8 team. There are people in entire departments of large organizations built to help the space out. That is entirely why many of us folks are out here doing what we do. And it's not just us. There are plenty more resources out here who will lean in and you can leverage those folks as well. If you know MSPs in your local market and you want to talk to them, find them, go talk to them, have lunch with them, pick their brain a little bit. Most MSPs are willing to help each other out as long as they're not helping, you take a client over from them, proactively or something like that. Again, this industry is designed around people helping other people. And I think that is one of the coolest parts about this industry. So leverage the community where you can. If I try to boil this message down, is that this transition from technician to business feels uncomfortable because you're an expert at being a technical person. You are not an expert at the business side. And going from being an expert for thing over here to not being an expert of this thing over here feels uncomfortable. It doesn't feel great. And it's hard to kind of work your way through it. And there are things in there that you don't want to have to deal with. I can't count the number of times that MSPs have come to me and they say, boy, I hate marketing. It's not a thing I'm good at. I don't want to do it. I'd never want to do it. Well, you still need to get good enough at it. You don't need to be an expert at it, but you need to be good enough at it. And those are some things you just have to learn as you go. And so lean in, grow your team, hire smart people, let them be smart on your behalf, and allow them to help you grow your business and take care of them along the way. When you do all those things, everybody wins. And when everybody wins, your company grows. With that, I'm going to drop a couple leadership videos up over here. And I'm going to drop a couple videos around peer groups and other ways to learn up over here. Thanks for coming on this ramble with me. Hope to see you on the next one.